Welcome to another episode of a Candor Gander DFK Unmasked, where we talk to wonderful people like you, me, Mr. Zipper, Dr. Zipper, the DFK Variety Show, where we chat about anything. Now, I was telling Dr. Zipper, it's like I've never done this before, so I think I hit the stream button. I see some people in chat. I know it's an awkward time of the day for a lot of us, so you may be catching this after the fact. Never fear, no worries. It should be a good one. Dr. Zipper, before we go ahead and get started, I just want to go ahead and just remind people to consider a like, a subscribe, turn on those notifications, follow me on Twitter, follow Dr. Zipper on Twitter. He's gonna have to update his handle there, Mr. Zipper7.
I will.
Um, yeah, with that said, I mean, Dr. Zipper, what a ring to it.
It does, doesn't it?
It's got a very nice ring. Tell us about yourself, and as you tell us about yourself, you've got to tell us about the Doctor Zipper piece. That's fairly new. I think we all want to hear about it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so it's funny. It wasn't necessarily intended to be a permanent change. I mean, at least as far as the Discord handle goes, the doctor part is a permanent change. But
Yeah, I don't think you can go back on that.
yes, I'm very grateful for that anyway, because I don't want to relive it. But yeah, no, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I don't want to assume that everybody knows who I am, but I've certainly been around for a very long time. Started hanging out in the kingdoms way back last September, a very, very long time ago, and just kind of stuck around and made myself useful. I wrote a whole bunch of articles on Medium about hero stats and things that were going on. For a while, got to be a little too much to keep up with at one point. Became was one of the bards in the original bard program way back when. Became a knight after that, and eventually joined the team. So I'm pretty excited to have gone through that crazy journey, all while at the same time finishing up a PhD, which has officially just concluded as of 2 weeks ago. So very happy about that part too, and for that part of that journey to conclude, and for me to embark on this new one now. So yeah.
And it's great. So PhD in what? Because you could have a PhD in almost anything. I just want to know how much of a masochist you were.
Yeah, it's a PhD in medieval history.
No way, that is super cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, first of all, I didn't know they had such a thing. Second of all, the history nerd in me, um, geez, oh my God, wow, that is super cool. How long was your program?
I'm going to decline to answer that question.
Oh,
It's
no
been a
worries.
very long time. I spent much longer doing it than I should have.
I,
So
I,
it's been a while.
I totally hear you. I'm on the same boat. I got my master's a couple years ago, and I took the 4.5 year track on a 2 year program. So I hear you. I
Yeah,
feel you.
no, yeah. Yes, I'm all about doubling the expected length of of the program.
It's the only way to do it. It's the only way to do it. So that's super cool. Medieval history, man. I mean, it's such a, how did you end up there? I mean, you could have picked anything. What about
I could
medieval
have.
history? I mean,
Um,
yeah.
I mean, it's something that I guess just goes back a long way. It was an interest that I acquired as an undergrad a long time ago, but even then, I realized that it was from a childhood of growing up playing D&D and playing with castle Legos, and all of these things that kind of feed into Legend of Zelda, um, all of these things that just feed into that general period, or fantasy period, Lord of the Rings, all of that stuff. And so it just kind of stuck around, and when I started actually learning some of the real history behind the period, it just it was really exciting, and kind of gripped me in a particular way. And so I just kind of stuck with it and just kept doing that, because it was kind of all I knew what to do. And started picking up some other hobbies and interests along the way, and eventually managed to find myself in a place where I have a bunch of skills that I can use in varying different ways that have nothing to do with medieval history.
Well, you know what? I actually got my undergrad in U.S. history, um, and I must say medieval history sounds just much funner.
Yeah, I think so. I could have never done a program in U.S. history. I just boring, so boring.
Yeah, you're like, I've heard that one before.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's funny how I think that's the case for a lot of people, where certain historical periods really catch your attention, and others may not. Um, and that's really true. I mean, I think of everybody, but even gets more exacerbated at higher levels too, because like stuff that people are so into that they would get a PhD in it, like I have zero interest in whatsoever, and that goes both ways as well, for sure.
Well, so tell me about I looked it up. Tell me about, do you recall what you were doing at, when it was September 13th, 2021 at 11:46 a.m. Do you remember that day? Do you remember that
September
second?
13th, 2021 at 11:46 a.m. Is that
Correct.
Pacific time or Eastern time?
I think it's Pacific, maybe. I
Okay.
think it's
Either
Pacific.
either way. Wait, September 14th?
13th.
13? Yeah, that would have been the day probably that I first entered the gardens in DeFi Kingdoms, and made my first. I think it was $100 purchase in Jewel or something like that, that I paired with some one and put it in the gardens. And at that time there were. I think it was probably still something like 80,000% APRs in the gardens, and I was like, it's $100. What happens if I lose it all? It's not that big a deal, and we'll just try it and see what happens.
Right. Well, and do you recall what the price of Jewel was at that point in time?
Ooh, I want to say it was somewhere between, I think, like 50 and 75 cents, maybe, or maybe it was still
Okay.
lower then. Maybe it was something like 30. I don't quite remember.
Not bad, not too shabby. I mean, you rode the beginning of that wave, so that's great.
So
Um,
what was the price?
I actually don't know.
Oh,
See, I did my
okay.
research, but my research stopped there.
Okay, well, fine.
Spoken like a true history major. My professor said, now you have a degree in BS. You can BS anyone because you have the degree and they don't, and they kind of just have to take things as fact. Now this was maybe before things got really popular with Google. I think you can't do that anymore, but the internet's really taken its hold, and maybe made some of my BS skills a bit sort of null and void there.
Or
No,
at least
so
more
so
fact checkable.
there you go, more fact checkable for sure. Um, what got you into DFK originally? I mean, you don't just stumble on a conceivably obscure project. And with those APRs at that time, I can't imagine. I know it's $100, but I can't imagine. In my head, I'm thinking something sketchy here. What's going on?
Right. Yeah, so I mean, this is the hilarious part. I actually found it on Reddit. I was perusing one of those like shill me your crypto threads, that I know are terrible to to read and to follow any advice, obviously, but in one of these threads I stumbled across, somebody made a post that said something like, DeFi Kingdoms is literally a money printer right now. And I said, "What's that?" And I don't know why that caught my attention. It wasn't like I was like, "Oh, a money printer," but I was like, "Okay, I wonder what that is." And I guess I just Googled it or something, and was immediately caught by probably the same thing that caught most of us, which is this gamified decks with these potential for hero NFTs and doing quests and all sorts of cool stuff. And also, yeah, it also had 80,000 percent APRs or whatever it was. So I mean, that was enough to catch my interest. I popped into the Discord and stuck around for a little bit. It was probably a few days before I'd even put that first $100 in. I was probably just looking around like, is this real? Is this actually real? Is this because there were so many just crazy farming scams. I mean, there still are, but I had been aware of the kind of stuff that was going on Binance Smart Chain at that point, which a lot of which is just really, really, really scammy. And so I was being really cautious about that. But um, just being in Discord, seeing the people that were there, seeing the dev team, seeing Fox and others, talking about the project and, what they were trying to do with it, gave me a little bit of confidence to say, okay, it's $100. Let's see what happens. And shortly after that, I, aped in a little bit more. So
I think we've all spent a bit more money at a slot machine or a lottery
yeah,
scratcher, right? I mean, $100, not too bad. And it turned out to be a very eventful $100 because it
yeah,
wasn't just people. I mean, you went from just a general community person to our now community developer liaison specialist. So tell me about that transition. I mean, how do you go from just being like the rest of us to getting an, yeah, I don't suspect you got a phone call, getting a Discord message and saying, hey, are you interested in blah 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 blah. How did that transpire?
yeah. I mean, I think I said it before, but what it really was making myself useful. And also I think being in some of the right places at the right times as well. Um, just in terms of when we were looking for people and stuff, in certain kinds of positions. I mean, like I said, I started out, in the Bard program, which was really at the tail end of the program. And that, for those of you who were not around back last year, that was originally created for content creators, maybe more for influencers to just kind of spread the word. And it was, an original program from the very beginning, to, get people to just go out there and make DeFi Kingdoms content. And so, I mean, and that wasn't an immediate thing either. That was something that I, eventually applied to 3 or 4 months after making weekly newsletters that were getting 1,500 views a day, or 15,
Wow.
yeah, so something like 1,500 readership. Like, that's not bad for as for a small project or whatever. So, like, I mean, I had been doing that for a while, and not just showing up and being like, hey, hire me or whatever. And I had no expectations from that or from anything else. So yeah, I mean, it was just a matter of being present, doing something that was needed. I mean, particularly with that, I saw a niche that really wasn't filled, that people wanted more content about heroes, about some of the in-depth mechanics. I wrote wrote that one article about hero genes that is still, I think, kind of the canonical article,
It,
about how genetics works.
yes. Yeah, no, I mean, you really paved the way for many of us, for a lot of us. I mean, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that for
Yeah,
sure. So you transition. Um, I mean, and it pains me to ask you what you do now, because when I think of Dr. Mr. Zipper, I think you do everything. Like, maybe the question's much easier phrased in the following way: what aren't you doing at DFK these days, right? So, but I mean, what specific, you sort of have your hands in a lot of a lot of almost everything, right? To some
yeah,
extent.
yeah. I mean, I I don't want to overstate my importance, because I am very much the lowest person on the totem pole, in Kingdom Studios right now, and I'm well aware of that, and that's fine. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that was, you know, useful for me is the fact that I do a lot of stuff, and that I can. I'm really kind of a jack of all trades. I can't necessarily do anything that well, but I can do a lot of things decently. And so, that means that I've been able to, you know, do, some cool writing, understand some cool technical stuff. I, had one of the very first things I did way back in, last October, was start editing the public docs. I wrote a FAQ for the docs that unfortunately is still there, and we really need to do something about it. Um, but it's like I found a few places that could be filled with various kinds of skills, and I'm just trying to kind of fill in where I can. So it's like I've got tech background, I've got writing. I overstate the tech background. Writing skills. little bit of programming, wrote the hero bot. That was another, whole thing that I had been working on, long before anything had started. And so, I just kind of got my hands in a lot of different things. I mean, officially, the primary thing that I'm working on is working with the Kingdom Builder program, and working with our community devs to to promote their own projects and integrate stuff and help them out with what they need. So that's kind of a big thing. But I'm also still part of the community team, so I'm still a presence in Discord. Obviously, I'm still I'm red. I'm not yellow. So I'm there doing that, doing alpha testing, working with the knights to help with all of those sorts of community concerns. So I mean, yeah, I'm just trying to be useful in whatever ways I can and not be too annoying.
No, and you're more than useful. I mean, Grady talks about having Mr. Zipper in his back pocket, and I would agree with him. I think we all need a Mr. Doctor Zipper in our back pocket for
That'd
sure.
be great.
Something akin to like a Pokedex, right? Pull out a Mr. Zipper sort of bat signal. Tell me about, how does it feel? I mean, has it sunk in? Does it sink in at any point in time? It's a project you were, if you found it on Reddit, you jumped on sort of, without truly knowing what it, what it could be or what it was gonna be, right? And now you're sort of part of, you're part of the team. I mean, does that sink in? Is it, it's sort of, to me, it's sort of akin to working at like you're living out your hobby, and you've sort of
Mhm.
made it your 9 to 5, right? I mean, how does that feel? And sort of walk us through those emotions.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's really great to be on that side of it, because in a lot of ways, I feel like I was doing some of. I mean, I'm still doing a lot of the same things that I had been doing, right? And so in some ways, it's just kind of formalizing what, in some ways, I was already doing. On the other hand, it feels really nice to be on the other side of that, and to be able um, to have those interactions with all the rest of the team. The who has who many of whom have been following my own journey for for a long time. The first thing I did, obviously, when I got into Slack, was go and search for my name, and find these various references. Oh, Mr. Zipper did XYZ, this is really great, da da da. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but like, it was like, that feels good, right? To see that people had been seeing what you were working on for a long time. So that's really, that's really nice. It's really gratifying. It's also, you know still very much an adjustment to go from community member or knight, even to being like, oh yeah, I'm DMing Fox, the thing that we're not allowed to do, right?
You're doing it, and you're
and
encouraged to do it because now it's
yeah,
your
and
job.
asking for stuff too,
Right.
which is a funny position to be in as well. I mean, just because of that long term, relationship and trajectory, not because he's unapproachable or anything like that, but it's just a shift to get used to.
Yeah, well, and it's sort of I mean, I know we all talk about what makes the project unique. I think one of the things that sort of always jumps to the top, maybe doesn't get mentioned as often as it maybe should. Um, it you guys are really family, whether directly. I know. There's direct family members in the team, or sort of adopted community members that have become family. I mean, we talk about how the community is pretty unique for DFK, and just the dev team, the team itself sort of is it's a reflection of all that, right? I mean, so it's
Mhm.
it's really awesome, really cool. I mean, does it really feel like that family wholesome thing? Like, I mean, I think of a work environment, sort of an ideal work environment for me, at least, is sort of being able to work with people you would consider your friends, family, right? Is there a lot of that goes around, or is it sort of straight business? Let's get the job done.
I think it's both. I think, people are really focused on the tasks at hand, but also in a way that, everybody is looking to take care of everybody else, and make sure, we're doing okay. And, and having a good time, and feel comfortable and welcome. I mean, I felt really welcomed when I joined, and that was a really good feeling.
And this comment, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, really, it's a crazy environment, crypto as a whole,
Yep.
and it takes a certain kind of someone to be able to do the jobs you guys all do. I mean, you guys need to be sort of squared away, strong-headed, strong-willed individuals, to be able to do this on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I'll private message Bolon sometimes when I see something chaotic happening in Gen 10. I'm like, dude, I don't envy your job. Have a nice one. I'm
Yeah.
calling it a night. I'm calling it a night. I know your night's just getting started. So I mean, it really takes a certain sort of personality, and you guys got it down. You guys got it down.
Yeah, and it's taken a lot of persistence, I think, too. It's not like it was easy, to get to where we, as a team are at this point. It's been not a super fun last 6 to 8 months, and at a lot of times, but again, the persistence, has really paid off, and thanks, Thoric. um, yeah, and so we do what we can to make it fun, and but also get stuff done, and people put in crazy hours to get stuff done.
So let's take a trip down memory lane. Let me pull out my projector reel and do sort of a look back. I spent some time creating a video. Hopefully it works. We'll see, and then we'll go back and we'll talk through some things here. So let's see if I can pull that off. Give me a sec.
All right.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I had to pull out the old sort of reel here. I mean,
That's great.
Dr. Miss, and that was great. Good. Yeah, it took me like way much. I'm weird like that. When I get fixated on something,
Oh
like
yeah.
it's like, oh, I got an itch. I got to scratch it. It took me a lot longer. Yeah, I probably spent way more time on that than I should have. But I wanted to use that as a transition to talk about you and what you've done. Let's start with the old Mr. Zipper. I went back to some of your old messages, sort of scouring through them, and you did a change. You became maybe a bit more sort of business professional once you became part of the team. But
Yep.
I wanted to sort of harken back to some of those old messages and talk through them. I think there's some messages in there, some comments in there that sort of resonate even now. Sort of wanted you to comment on those as we see
Yeah,
them here
sure.
on screen. Um, so let's see. First one here. So right, a couple of days after you joined, um,
Oh yeah.
yeah. I mean, even then, right? It's one of those things where time and time again you hear, "Hey, you know what? Project can't be for the whales. It defeats the purpose." Um, and to this date, I mean, I feel like many of us, any of us, can sort of have an edge where in other projects, if you're not bankrolling, there's no chance for you.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me about sort of you're reading this here. Tell me about the message. You're reflecting back on who you were there and what you're doing now. I mean, how do you feel about that message? What sort of emotions does it sort of bring
Yeah,
up?
that's really great, and I mean, thanks for pulling that up. I think one of the things that I felt when I first, was getting into the project, this was, shortly before the Gen Zero sale, the original one, and there was, I think the first governance vote around the pricing for those, and I was priced out. I did not. Um, well, I ended up scraping the money together, but then it wasn't actually enough to purchase one at the time, even though I was there. Um, and I definitely got a little salty about, and that was 2 weeks before. But when we were looking at the pricing and first talking about setting it, and I think part of that came from where I had been before this, and I had been spending a bunch of time on the Wax blockchain,
Mm,
which also does a lot of NFT and gamey stuff. And one of the things about projects there is that by and large, projects were minted for extremely low prices. And then it was really common for them to sell out immediately and then flip at much higher prices. And so I was expecting, I don't know, $50 mints or something like that. And it ended up being, 1,000 to 2,000 or whatever it was. And so that caught me off guard a little bit. And I was like, well, shit, I'm here, I'm here in week 3 or something like that. I've put, money into the gardens already, at whatever the APRs were. Like, surely there should be some benefit to that, that should allow me to get in at the ground level with these Gen Os and, and be able to do something with that. And I wasn't able to. And I definitely got a little salty about that.
Well, you know what? And I sympathize with you because and many of us, I think, sympathize with you. I got in. I was salty because I couldn't get in on a like level 7 pirate gardener, in January.
Yeah.
I felt priced out then too, and
Yeah,
I knew I was
I can't
gonna.
even imagine at that
Yeah.
point.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I think Heroes floor price was
It's like
several hundred
$300.
bucks.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, it felt ridiculous. Like, no way. Like, I got super FOMO, and it was, I think I've said it before, but it was at the time when the tavern was sort of glitching, and it
Right.
wasn't, you weren't able to sort of necessarily
Couldn't
purchase
even buy
heroes that were
anything.
posted.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like, oh my God, these things are selling out. I need to get my hands on anything. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Um, but sort of, one of the things I sort of take as an opportunity for me, and maybe anyone else who's coming in at this point in time, is you're sort of resetting the clock. If you believed in the project then, for me, this, I'm speaking for myself. If I believed in the project then, and I've seen it progress the way it has, and I've sort of heard some of those plans for what the future holds, and it's at today's prices, it's sort of an opportunity for me. So I'm personally not bummed out at the price point now. For me, it's an opportunity to DCA and do some more of
Yeah.
that, and maybe in a year things change, but the potential, it's real, it's there, it's amazing. Let's look at another comment here.
Yeah.
But I want Lambo now.
I don't even
Don't
know
we
what
all?
that's about. I mean, I'm sure that's sarcasm, but
And
yeah,
I'm and
I have
I'm
no idea.
And I'm sure it is, but I can't imagine, what, it almost, it almost sounds like the Wild West, right? Like crazy APRs, it's just,
Yeah.
um, and in crypto in general, right? People wanting instant gratification. I don't know what people expect sometimes. It's like, hey, and well, no, I'll correct myself. I know what people expect, right? They expect instant gratification. They want
Yep.
they want $100 to turn into a million overnight, and
Yeah.
that's just not how things work. Not even in crypto, right? But um,
Most
the
of the
level
time.
of most of the time, you're right. The level of patience to sort of sit through a bear market. I mean, how, as a crypto consumer and now part of a dev, I mean, how does that, what keeps you motivated, what keeps you going? Because I'm sure it's not easy to wake up every day and be like, oh man, let's get pumped on, what we're working on. And then you're looking at markets as a whole, and it's not just crypto, right? But markets
Yeah.
as a whole sort of taking a dump. What keeps you motivated?
Um, Primarily the fact that I'm having a ton of fun. All of the different stuff that we're working on, the team itself, I mean, it's really exciting, and the work itself I enjoy. Even, I mean, you may have picked up, I'm the kind of person who sometimes enjoys really kind of tedious things. um, but I really enjoy the work that I'm doing, and that's motivating to me. The vision of the project is motivating. Um, and talking to Thork every day is motivating. Um, and I lost my train of thought. I think what's interesting is that, like, by and large, I think a lot of the team doesn't really look at the market. Like, we have to be aware to some extent of the token price, but like, sometimes I will go into price discussion and they're talking about something that happened with the price of Jewel, and I'm just, or Crystal or whatever, and I'm just like, what happened? Really? And I think there's a way in which you can get so focused on the price of stuff that it just becomes obsessive, and maybe sometimes in a not healthy way. And if you are able to take a step back from that and focus on, I mean, for us, for building, or for community, just building community and having fun, then it becomes a lot more enjoyable. And that's not to say that, like, a lot of people are not significantly down, especially if you entered in January or February, and that sucks, obviously. But like you said, it is potential for a resetting point, and just trying to not focus so much on the price all the time. That will follow when the building comes. It's not going to happen before that, and we don't want it to, because that's not healthy. At Decentral, and the panel that Dreamer was on, the host of that panel kept asking questions like, what are you going to do to pump your price? Like, how are we going to get rich? When are we going to make money again? And like, I think his Dreamer, and others on that panel were rightly pointing out, it's like, stop asking the wrong questions. Like, that's not what it's about right now. It will be about that, I guess, hopefully later at some point. But right now, build products and build community.
No, I mean, absolutely. And it's, and I've heard many, including myself, sort of wonder and sort of, ponder, hey, you know what? I think the team, the project could do more in terms of marketing. And, but I think back and I sit back and then it's sort of, hey, yeah, marketing's great, but you want to have a sort of nearly finished product to be able to market. Not that you guys don't have a finished product per se, but I think if
Yeah,
we're
it's a
thinking
tough
about
balance.
grandiose vision, right? I mean, if you think of a new person coming into the project, I think back to all those sort of disheartened fudders, right? Who are like, oh, grumbling, right? And it's like, well, you know what? And I think in order to avoid a lot of that, let's promote something that I see the vision, I see what Wisdom's doing, I see what Workhorse is doing. I think once some of those pieces are there, I think that's when we start having some of those conversations.
Yeah.
And and I think what we were doing as a community, things like these, things that Grady Rock, ADFK, Boxside, all these other content creators, it's a form of marketing, and I'm
Yeah.
sure the more formalized form will come in due time, right?
Yeah, it'll come.
Before I move forward, what color Lambo are you
Oh,
looking
what
at? I
color was the
mean,
yeah, I wasn't even sure what. It's got to be blue or something. I don't know.
blue. Oh,
I mean, the
red or
hilarious thing is, I mean, I don't care about I don't care about sports cars. Like, it's not my thing
and
at all. So
yeah. I don't think a Lambo would be my choice car either, but you've got to have one, right? I mean, if you're crypto rich, I think it comes with the territory.
apparently,
uh,
yeah. Well, if only it would just come with the territory, and it didn't have to be.
Yeah, right. Well, here, something that you could have probably written 20 minutes ago, but you wrote back in September, right? Fudders everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen them, from project inception. I mean, being in the community and now being part of the team. I mean, what's your perspective on fudders, on sort of people who just come in and sort of scream that the sky's falling.
Yeah.
I mean, has that changed any for you? Do you have a newfound perspective?
Um. Maybe I'll say yes. But that's because I can, and this isn't necessarily immediately new, but because I can see all of the work that's going into stuff behind the scenes, because I know, some of the people now and I've gotten to know them. I think in some ways it becomes more frustrating. Um, it's really, really easy to be an armchair quarterback and just complain and complain when you're not contributing anything at all, to the community or to the game itself. And that's really frustrating. So, one of the things that I've noticed is that there's really a lack of grace in this space, that there's no willingness to accept that, that people are doing their best, but they make mistakes sometimes. And that, we can't always do stuff perfectly all of the time. And yeah, the team has, made our fair share of mistakes over the past year. And we're not going to deny that. But when people are still complaining about things that we've acknowledged, or just coming in bringing stuff up from a year ago or whatever, it's like, okay, great, we've moved past this, the community has moved past this. But then you get people out there on Twitter or whatever who seem to call themselves the voices of the community, even though they have no connection to it at all at this point, and call our community a bunch of cultists or whatever. And that's frustrating. It's not like I don't want dissent. It's okay to disagree, it's okay to criticize. And I mean, that's really important. And we try to be really careful of that in Discord, even about who we're, when we're silencing dissent. But there are lines that that people sometimes cross, and it's like, okay, now we're moving far away from actual criticism, or legitimate criticism, into stuff that's just not, it's not productive. So I mean, so yeah,
Right.
that gets frustrating.
Yeah, and it's sort of an interesting atmosphere, crypto as a whole. I mean, it's one of those few things, and I've said it before, I think, where it's you're guilty first, and you need to prove innocence. I mean, it's sort of, and you can
Yeah.
anonymously point fingers and sort of accuse people of things, and and call it a day, and come back under a different anonymous profile, and it's sort of interesting, and I commend you all for that, because I know that's hard. I see it. Let's do another comment here. Sell your car, house, wife, kids, all in NFA.
Yep.
And I'm sure this was another sarcastic comment, but the idea of sort of just jumping all in any project. I mean, I'm bullish. I'm sure you're bullish. I know many of us here in chat are bullish, but I mean, it's sort of tapered expectations. Maybe some of that. And I know we've touched on that, but um, the idea of just jumping sort of feet first into something. Retrospectively, would you have sold the kids, the house, the car, the everything? And maybe you would have, right? Because if we're doing, we're looking back. In September, things look promising. You sell in January, but I mean, what's your advice for anyone who's just jumping into not just DFK, but I think any project?
I mean, number one, of course, is do your own research. I mean, make sure that you actually know what you're jumping into. Um, Obviously, or just degen and just throw throw it all in. I don't know. I mean, I think you should be careful. I think you should do due diligence, figure out what the project is really about, what it's trying to achieve. Is there a long-term vision? Is there an action? Is there a plan to get there? That was something that maybe we didn't have back last September, but we have a much better sense of now. Um, but no, I mean, you of course you shouldn't, sell your house and your wife and your kids and buy everything. That's a terrible idea, but sometimes it works out really well too. No, that's
Yeah,
that's why
yeah.
it's NFA. I mean, the funny part about this is I'm a super conservative investor. Like, this is like the only thing, and it's ridiculous that I even ended up here doing this in the first place, even with that initial $100. Like, what am I even doing in DeFi? So, the whole thing is just kind of hilarious to me to begin with.
Well, and let's transition a little bit to the heroes hold. Um, how did that start? What is that for people who don't know what that is, and where can they find some of these publications?
Yeah, so that was my newsletter that I was writing on Medium for, I think it was a good 6 months or so, or maybe it was just shy of. I think I wanted to round it out nicely, but never managed to. I think it's medium.com/ Mr. Zipper 7 probably. I'm not actually sure. Um,
I
but
can I
yeah,
can drop a link here.
sure.
But yeah,
The idea was that at that time, I think you posted the date was like November 15 or something like that. We had a bunch of new heroes from Gen O's and from summoning that had started, and a tavern that had been launched, and all that stuff had been live for probably only about a month or so. Um, and there was really no way of tracking anything or of knowing anything about what the broader statistics of the hero population looked like. And I had been playing around with stuff with the API and learning some of the blockchain stuff, and uh, wrote a couple little Python scripts to pull all of that hero data, and was able to aggregate it and get a sense of what stuff looked like, what volume looked like, what all of that stuff that was going on was. And so I mean, it just kind of started, thought that that was a need that the community had, like, well, what is going on with these? And and expanded from there, from just hero stats and sales and stuff like that, to to being news about about the community, and or about the game, I guess. First of all, like, what's coming up next, um how does certain stuff work, what's a cool new hero that people should know about that was just summoned this week, and eventually including a bunch of links to community stuff as that was going on as well, because it became so much bigger than than what just I was doing, and I became the small fish in a big pond of content creators, which was really exciting.
well, so and we talked about sort of our love for history here, and for those of you who sort of want to step back in time and see some of the things, it's sort of interesting.
Yeah, it's a
You'll
trip.
find stuff. Yeah, you'll find stuff like this issue number two. Someone paying 115,000 jewel for four mythic heroes. I mean, and
Yep.
they're not just your everyday average mythic hero, right? They're Gen Zeros, but wowzers! I mean,
Yeah, I mean, there was
interesting.
a lot of really exciting stuff going on, and I mean, it in the early days there, of course, there were a lot of firsts. It's like, oh, first, first Dread Knight, first Legendary Dread Knight, first Mythic, all of these big sales, more expensive sales than the previous ones, and so it was really easy to to keep building on on bigger things. And and then that slowed down a bit. It's like, okay, well, here's the 100,000th hero, here's the 200,000th hero. But yeah, I mean, it was really exciting back then, because there was all this new stuff and people were still discovering it.
Super huge shout out to everyone here in chat. Low Tech, welcome, Captain Zabu, Cujo, Ghost Panda, Toric. I'm gonna mispronounce this one here. Eric Zier. Welcome all. Let's do another one here. This one was captivating, and it sort of drove me to think. And to me, it's almost a mystery because I couldn't find whether or not you solved this mystery, and maybe and maybe you can enlighten me. Um, Let me blow this one up here.
Yep.
So episode 4 with 19 promo heroes, 75 airdrops, and 2,000 sold. This means there should be a potential of 2,094 Gen Zeros. 2091 have been minted. Will we see three more? Did we see three more?
We
Were
did.
there three more? Are
There
they
were
okay?
three
So
more.
December 6th was and for those of you who've not seen the Medium article, you sort of chatted. You were talking about how there was someone who had sort of opened, cracked that crystal.
That was Hippo.
Um, oh, there you go. Hip one December. The other three, when did those get opened up?
um, I think in January and February. They were, all three of them were some of those airdrop heroes that had gone to, I think, 24 of those had been reserved for kind of partnerships / content creators. So, I mean, it was really meant to just draw in influencers and get attention. And a couple of those had been airdropped to people and forgotten about. And surprise, surprise, that come January or February, a couple of people realized that they were sitting on, these $50,000 whatever, assets. So yeah, they did all end up getting opened. And I think I probably wrote about it at the time as well.
Okay, yeah, I was intrigued. I was like, So then that took me down a rabbit hole of just the topic, the idea of Gen Zeros. I think we can all agree that Gen Zeros are very much important to the ecosystem. Without Gen Zeros, there aren't heroes. There isn't a DFK to, as we know it. So some Gen Zero facts for us all. I wanted to take you through sort of a tour of facts, sort of reminisce on
Yeah.
times where you would do this for you. I think with any of these numbers, I say asterisks, right? What I used to pull this data was a combination of a few different things. I used DFK analytics, ADFK, sort of cross reference information. So we'll start with this one here. There's 178. That's our number. That's how many berserkers we have, and that makes them the least common Gen Zero. I mean, what do you think of that?
That's interesting. I had not looked at that. So that's interesting. I mean, I want to say there are a couple of Crystal Veil Gen Zero crystals that were not dropped. We're still a little under the number on those. So those could appear at some point, be used for some stuff. But more than that, there were a lot of Crystal Veil Gen Zeros that were never opened. From people who qualified. They got the extual airdrop, or some of the other airdrops that we were doing and prep for the launch. But by the time that by the time they were released, they had left the project, and are still sitting on those assets.
Isn't that just wild? Isn't
It
that just
is.
crazy? I mean, and maybe they come back, but again, and I'll get to this here at the end as well. But it sort of pains me to think of all these hero genes that will sort of, they're dead. We'll never
Yeah.
see in their the gene pool sort of grow out of these Gen Zeros that have been unopened or unused. 831 number of Gen Zeros that have never left their original owners. So
Oh
these
wow.
are either, they've either not been sold, maybe they were opened and not used, or they were never transferred to another wallet. Sort of an alt account. 831. Sort of interesting, isn't it?
That's I don't know if that's more or fewer than I would have expected. I'm not surprised that there are that many people who have never transferred their Gen Zero. I mean, they are valuable assets. I think I was looking the other day at the numbers of Gen Zeros that were still left on Harmony, and I think that there were a little over 200 or about 230 of them.
Wow.
So those are Gen Zeros that we could probably consider out of commission at this time, from people who have just completely stopped paying attention entirely. And, maybe they'll come back at some point, but like that reduces it by a little bit. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I take the point. It would be great to do that. But the problem is if we did that, then if those other people came back, then we would have too many of them. So, I mean, it would be interesting to come up with something, some way to do that. It's definitely come up before, for
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, and I get the argument, right? You can't sort of redistribute an asset that's already been allocated to someone. So I
Yep,
see that
can't
point.
take can't take it off the blockchain.
But the genes, they're
I
going
know,
unused. All
I know.
right, let
It's
me see if
sad.
you can guess this one. Let me give you a guess. What do you think the number of Gen Zero heroes that belong to a single wallet address?
The top number.
Yep.
Last time I checked, it was 50 by Harambe.
No, it's not 50. It's 54
54 now.
now by Harambe. The
Yeah. Well,
number of Gen Zeros that belong to a single owner.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, that is almost doubled from 2 weeks ago. It had been, I think, about 20, 28, or maybe low 30s or something like that. And the dude just went on a buying spree. Um, And I mean, I couldn't believe it when I saw the stats from Monday, when I saw the 50, because that was a huge change, which means, you know, that some whale out there, who claims that he is not the Harambe that we all know in chat, but a different one maybe, um, is really really invested in that.
So ask, and let me ask you the question, because I went maybe I took a harder route than I needed to, but where if anyone else wanted to find these these stats, where would you recommend they dig? Because like I said, Sabu, and for others listening, what I
Yeah,
used was DFK Analytics. I downloaded the information spreadsheet and I sorted and I did things manually, cross reference using
yeah.
ADFK. But is there an easier way to go about this?
Nope.
Okay, well there we go.
No, not really. I mean, depending on what you're looking for, you know, you could find stuff in the tavern if the searches are what you want them to be. You're not going to find that with owners or anything like that.
Right.
But yeah, I think that using something like DFK Analytics or ADFK or DFKing or some of these other tools would be really the best way. I think one thing that we're really missing right now, the community is really missing, is a really good um, I don't know, aggregate dashboard of stuff. Like, analytics is amazing. I mean, and all of these products are amazing, but they're also really tuned for very specific things, and those things are not aggregate data. Which you know, to be fair, was like the niche that I was trying to fill when I was writing those articles too, because it is difficult data to get a hold of, and I still pull that data every week. You know, but it has to be done. I have to run through all 350 whatever 70,000 heroes, 1,000 at a time, and these days it takes about 30 or 35 minutes to do all of that, you know, to just pull all of that data. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no,
a
I
real
was I
problem.
was I was up late pulling all these stats. I hope you like them.
Yeah, I love it.
So 54 is number one. Number two, for anyone wondering, 32 Gen Zeros.
32,
So
yeah.
someone owns 32 Gen Zeros. I mean, the idea of owning 30, 50. I mean, it boggles the mind.
Yep.
So with that said, Harambe owns 54. Next one, 32. Um, you want to take a guess as to how many unique Gen Zero owners we have? Wallet addresses?
um yeah, I think it's around 930-ish now.
Dude,
Yeah.
928.
Yeah, and that's
I'm
down from about
impressed.
950, but that's also probably because Harambe went on that buying spree. So yeah, I mean,
I,
and this was
I'm
one of the things that I
impressed.
was tracking, right? Was Gen Zero ownership and watching for consolidation, because people were really worried early on that they were all going to fall into a few hands, that big, big guilds or DAOs were going to buy them all up and restrict the supply. Cujo, no, those are not including multi wallets. It's hard to tell who all is a multi wallet, but generally people tend to keep Gen Zeros in the same wallets, I found.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't exclude multi wallets. I do know because I think Grady has maybe mentioned like he will do more than one wallet. And if you look through the data, you'll see some obvious like multi wallets where it's like, Sergeant Filthy McNasty 1, Sergeant
One,
Filthy
two,
McNasty
yeah,
2.
exactly.
Yeah, then you'll see that, you'll notice that. But by and large, I mean 928 unique wallet addresses. The real number maybe less than that. If I were
Yeah, but probably not
to
too
bet.
much. I would imagine not less than 900
So maybe take a guess here. What do you think the most common Gen Zero is
in terms of class.
in terms of class? Yep.
Oof. Mm, how about priest?
Pirates. We
Pirate.
have 270 pirates, making them the most common.
Interesting.
Yeah, and least
I mean,
common,
in
I think.
theory, those should be around equal, for all for all of them. But it's interesting.
And for those of you wondering, because I sure would have been wondering, how do the rest of the numbers break down? So I'll
Yeah,
pull
I was
this up
about
on
to
the screen.
ask.
Yeah, so pirates are number one, followed by
Priest.
priests
Okay.
at 269, wizards 269, berserkers. Those are your rarest at the moment, right? Your rarest
Yeah, that imbalance between
Gen
seer
Zeros.
and berserker is really interesting.
It is, isn't it?
That's surprising.
Yeah, I mean, but other than that, I mean, even-ish on those other, Serendo heroes. And maybe you would know, when you re-roll, do we re-roll? Can we re-roll for class?
No,
Presumably
you
changing
cannot.
these numbers. You
No,
cannot. Okay.
class will be the same. Your recessive class genes will all be potentially re-rolled, and then all of your subclass genes, including the dominant.
So and really the X factor here for all of us to consider is that these are the numbers, but we know, and as you mentioned, Mr. Zipper, we have a fair amount of these heroes that are potentially, dead, maybe forever as far as
Yeah,
gene pools go. So the true numbers of available heroes, sort of unknown, but it's sort of interesting to look at here.
yeah.
Let me hit you up with another one here. So I know we talked about, heroes or Gen Zeros that sort of have gone by the wayside. I was surprised by this number. Um, the number of virgin heroes, Gen Zero heroes, i.e., they've never been summoned with, that number boggled me. Do you want to take a guess how what that number was?
Probably like 100 or something.
Not quite.
Oh,
39.
only 39. Okay,
We have
that's fewer than I would
39.
have expected,
We
actually.
have 39 virgin Gen Zeros. Now I don't know, and I suspect this isn't accounting for any unopened crystals.
It would
Uh,
not, yeah.
yeah, so of those summoned Gen Zeros, 39 Gen Zeros have not been used.
Yeah. That's
And and
interesting.
and some of these Gen Zero heroes have not been
Leveled,
have
quested, have no
no,
experience, have
they've
never
never
done
left the
anything.
wallet, which makes me wonder, if the person even knows they own a Gen Zero. I mean, crazy, crazy,
There were a
crazy.
lot of people early on who thought they were going to be collectibles. I mean, who thought that having something that was never touched, never summoned with, never anything was going to increase its value. When in fact, the way that this whole thing works um, is that's a good question if that includes rerolls. I'm going to guess it does. Um, it might not actually. That's a good question. Um, but but the fact is, if you don't summon with them, if you don't quest with them, if you don't level them up, then they are losing value every day.
Pretty much, yes. Well, and you know what? And I think maybe to answer your question, I think it sort of accounts for rerolls because there were some Gen Zeros that on DFK Analytics showed, zero summons. But if you look at Descendants, you can tell that, they,
Okay,
they, they have a slew of Descendants. So I didn't include those because that number is probably closer to 130. These are just, they've never been used ever, period.
huh.
Um,
Well,
and
that's
it, and
that's
it,
interesting too. Though, is all these people who re-rolled them and then never summoned with them again. That's odd.
right, that is odd, right? So Aaron Price is asking, does that include an active Gen Zero still on Harmony? It does. And I think Mr. Zipper, Dr. Zipper, you mentioned there was 200. I think
30,
last
I
you
think. Yeah.
checked, yeah, in Harmony they're stuck there. They're stuck there.
Well, they're
I
not
think.
stuck. They could be moved
Oh,
anytime
sorry, yes, they're not stuck there, but as far as you and I are
of their
concerned,
own
they're sort of
volition.
in the
Yeah.
ether. Yes. Zabu, I can't wait for Legionnaire and Scholars, see what that looks
Oh
like.
man, they're so good. They're so good. I am so excited about them and also for the other two classes that will be coming as well. I cannot tell you how
I,
excited I am about both the advanced and the elite. I am
I'm, I, I'm a
bursting at the
little,
seams.
I'm a little jealous for the, and for those who've won one. Kudos to you all for sure. Crypto Grady in the house. Hello, hello.
Good to see you all.
Um, yeah, boy, yeah, the chat's popping now. So that's mention so on the Virgin Gen Zeros for those of you who didn't hear that are just jumping on now. We have 39 that have never been summoned with. So then my next logical question, maybe for you is, well, what heroes are those? What classes are we looking at? So for those of you wondering, of those 39, there are 10 seers that have never been utilized. um, and sort of the breakdown here, Berserker, 7 of them that have never been used. Sort of makes you think about, what that means for scarcity for Berserkers if they were
Yeah.
already the least sort of existing Gen Zero. Kind of crazy to think about. Um, I mean, of all the Gen Zero sort of stats we covered, which one sort of jumps to the top of your head and makes you sort of scratch your head?
Ah, I don't know. They're also fascinating. It's I mean, this is what I love about it is that you can sit down and you can find some stats about heroes that you've never considered. I mean, like I've been thinking about hero stats for a long time, and I'd never looked at some of those before. And that's so much fun to be able to see it and and ponder about it and think about what it means for the gene pool and for other things. I think the differences between the numbers of classes are really interesting. That really relatively low berserker count is fascinating.
It is
Um,
fascinating, isn't it?
I was just going to say, and that will play out when we get these new classes as well, because historically those two have been there's been a lot less interest in the two classes, and that's going to change real soon.
It,
Because we're going to need all those going
yeah, I
really
mean,
quick.
if you think about it from a supply demand standpoint, NFA, warning, it sort of makes Sears Berserkers to me maybe a bit more valuable than I once saw them before. I sort of did a lot of this digging. Um, to your point, I sort of dismissed them because, well, you got a shapeshifter, and then what can I do with it? But um, there's another comment that I didn't pull up from one of your Medium articles. I think we all sort of know. I think the idea is that we're gonna go ahead and sort of do some more cross-chain stuff and ultimately be able to summon a dread knight with us something to create a
Yeah,
super hero. And it sounds like that that's still conceivably the plan.
yep.
Potentially, that dread knight, you know partner or summoning comrade, would be even more valuable than we consider dread knights to be now. I mean, sort
Yeah,
of
and that half
interesting
of
to
the
think
tree
about.
will certainly be harder to fill out, I guess. Because there will be fewer of them, and also, I mean, because it takes time to to summon all of those heroes as well. So, like, by the time we get to that final pair on the of base classes on the tree, there will be very, very few of whatever they produce, and it's going to it'll take a long time for there to be any kind of catch up of all of those new classes, and eventually that new Dread Knight partner. I mean, it's going to be hard to get. It's going to take a lot of time and money for people who just buy stuff constantly.
No, 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 absolutely. Grady, prep that checkbook. Sounds like we'll all be spending a bit more money in the near future. I want to be mindful of your time. I know we're 11:06. Would I be able to borrow you for maybe another
Yeah,
10
yeah.
minutes?
Let's keep
Okay,
chatting.
cool. Cool. So with all that said, we have a few questions here. I'd be remiss if I didn't try and pull any alpha, and I think you'd be ashamed of me if I didn't try and pull any myself. Any advanced elite sort of hints that you
Nope.
might be able? Dang. All
No.
right, I
Okay.
tried.
Okay.
I
Okay.
tried,
Okay.
Aaron.
Let's think about this. I think both of those classes are going to be filling in niches that are not there right now, and um, I think the incomingness of combat um, is going to bring out a lot of different kinds of things that are interesting about classes that hadn't been considered before,
Oh, that's
or not just
that's
classes, but things that are related to classes.
okay. Okay. You're not saying this. I'm saying this, but crafting, maybe.
That is definitely one of them.
Oh, well, there you go. Oh, if I keep guessing, Mr. Zipper's gonna say yes or no. Okay.
Well, I mean,
I'm just
because these are things that have been public forever, and
no, no, no.
sometimes
You're right. You're right.
it's
It's
taking the pieces that are already out there and putting them together.
no.
One thing that
Exactly.
was mentioned about the Legionnaire that I think Hubert even said this in chat. Somebody was, and I'll get to that in just a second. Somebody was commenting like, why Legionnaire? It's basically just a dragoon or whatever. And Hubert's response to that was, we needed another class that had that used a pole arm, and that's not just for visual appearance. So,
That's huge. I mean, and regardless of what the actual utility might be, but the fact that you guys are even thinking, like, I mean, it's just it's crazy. I love it. I love it.
yeah.
Ah,
All right.
man.
So yeah, so for this one, matching main subclass heroes is going to be hands down better than mixed class heroes. No, absolutely not. And I mean, I don't know this at all because I have no knowledge whatsoever of what any of the skills that the workhorse and the combat team or in wisdom are doing. But I think workhorse has made it pretty clear that the goal for all of those things is balance. And what he said, and I think I saw it in chat too, is that it will be unique, but it will not necessarily be better. And workhorse was saying this in PvP chat the past couple of days too. Is like the player is going to matter far more than the hero. That doesn't mean that that a Dread Knight isn't have potential to be much better, because it has its abilities and its stats and everything else. But like the idea is to make this a game that really requires player decisions. So that's exciting.
So let me hit you with another one here. Does the game have a way to put Gen Zeros up for rent with an ongoing basis? Maybe more would be available for rent/use. I'm not sure if that makes a difference per se. I know it sort of circles back to the idea of some Gen Zeros not being utilized whatsoever. I don't know that that necessarily sort of addresses that issue, but I know maybe asking it in this way. I know we've been talking about or teasing out the idea of some perks for staking Jewel X Jewel. I mean, is this one of those maybe perks I've been pondering around, or has that, or have you guys not even sort of maybe sort of discussed the specifics of what some of those maybe perks would be?
We have lots and lots of ideas about what some of those perks can be. A number of them have been publicly stated, I think, as well. But I think this is a great idea for one of those. It's not something that had crossed my mind or attention anyway in terms of a possibility. But if that is feasible, given the way that the blockchain works and some of the things necessary for that, would probably require going to a contract and being held in a contract, the way that sales work rather than the way that rentals work. So you wouldn't be able to quest with it constantly while it's for rent, but you could put it up for rent and just have it kind of sit there and rent out. So yeah, it's definitely a possibility and something I'll bring up.
Yeah, Tune Fed, Mr. Zipper would murder me. He didn't like the idea of doing a 7.5 hour stream. I told him we'd beat Grady. He said, "No way, Jose." So no 24-hour stream, unfortunately. So this one's an interesting one, and I don't spend nearly as much time in PvP chat as maybe I should, but in PvP discussion, they were chatting about the sort of subclass matching sort of circumstance or scenario, what that might do. There was chat about unlocking special and exclusive abilities, which would be cool because I was pretty excited about it. A dark knight that I have, and I was like, oh man, it sounds cool, but is there any actual utility to this accidental summon? But I mean, in truth, I mean, you kind of want, big picture, you probably want variety in your subclass/main class. I mean, is that really I mean, that's a big takeaway here, right,
Right.
Mr. Zipper? Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's one of the goals, that you have the potential to do different stuff. I mean, that heroes with different subclasses will have different abilities, and maybe you want in a certain circumstance the ability to have a priest with a thief ability, or maybe you want to build something to be really, really priesty, and you want that particular priest ability. So I mean, the idea is that you have potential to do all kinds of different things, and having all of those different skills and skill combos means, I mean, just so much more potential for strategy and skill.
And this is funny, it almost sounds like nomenclature, right? Or it's semantics. Well, what does it matter? But I know the I think it was Boxside chat crew was chatting about, we talk about active one, passive, one, or passive genes. What should what should we be calling? Should we be calling those abilities? Should we be calling those? I mean, there's
That's
something. It's
yeah,
just we
that's
don't
a
know what
great
they are.
question, and I'm actually going to have to pass on that one because I don't have a super great sense of that at the moment, and I really should, and I don't. But I think the idea is that the abilities, the ones that come from genes, the active one, passive, active passive ones. These are abilities that are inherent to the hero, based on their gene sets that I believe are cross class, um, versus skills, which Workhorse said a little bit about this the other day, is our skill trees, right? And we've been getting these skill points every time you level up your hero. You get one skill point, which heretofore have done absolutely nothing. But those are going to be used in a skill tree that's going to be different for every class, and based on what I heard the other day, sounds like at least one class, but probably all of them will have multiple branches to those trees that you can work your way up, or however you want to work through them. I mean, and so when we're talking about customizing your hero and the way you want to do stuff with it, that's a lot of customization. Those skill points you get at every level, so best heroes have 20 of them right now, but that's a tree that's being built for 100 points. That's a lot. That's a lot of customization.
Yeah, no, gee, I I can't help but think about how much I hated biology growing up, and how biology sort of, and genetics really has been. I feel like we all deserve sort of a degree in DFK genetics. Maybe that's a participation trophy of sorts that would be cool to have. But I mean, really, I mean, geez, the idea of you could have a million different options, and not knowing what's the right option sort of boggles the mind. And in truth, I think there isn't one, right? There isn't
Right,
a
and there
right
shouldn't be.
hero,
If there's a right option, then that means that you've built the game wrong. Um,
right?
there should be multiple valid paths, that that all do different things, and that different kinds of builds should make a difference for for what you're doing with your hero. Not to mention weapons and armor in the future, as well as pets. Yeah, equipment is a thing. Um,
You did. You broke me. It's like whoa, boo. So I have to ask you. I was, if I feel like every time you guys do an AMA, I leave a bit more bullish than I did the week before, and I just want to just dump everything, sell the dog, right? And dump more money in. But when I saw and not so much the AMA, it was a Chaos Cast. When I saw the tour of Wisdom Labs, which by the way, I
isn't that
mean,
something?
let's start with the fact that Workhorse, he was sick and he was gonna take this on a tour, and it's like, oh, he almost made it sound like he had a very unprepared sort
Yeah,
of
sorry.
back pocket
Let me
video.
just play this video for you
Yeah,
guys
let me play
instead.
this
Sorry, guys.
throwaway video, and it's like, oh, like and maybe he did it intentionally. I had no expectations, when he said that, right? And then I see the video, and it's like, oh my god. I've since watched it several times, and I showed it to my wife, and her response was, "Well, you've always wanted to visit the Mall of America," which I'm taking as a green light to be able to travel
Do
there at
it.
some point in time. But I mean, when you saw, I don't, yeah, I presume that was your first sort of preview into what the facility looked like. I mean, what were your thoughts?
I mean, I was blown away too. I will say I I mean, I've looked before. I'm not totally unfamiliar with what Wisdom does and has been doing for the past few years in terms of production and stuff like that. Um, so, and I was talking about this with in the stream, in that stream, and in chat later, that I had been paying attention to the stuff that they've been doing with Heroes of a Storm and some of their other games, previously as a production company, and I knew that they had built the space out in the Mall of America. And I mean, I didn't have quite the sense of the extent of what it looked like, but I knew it was, it's production, it's for white label stuff, it's, for community stuff. They've got a bar. I was looking at their hiring listings the other day. They're hiring a bartender, which is a heck of a thing, for a company like that to be doing, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, I think we should definitely do DFK Con there, like no question.
I immediately followed up with a bowl on it, and I thought, I was like, hey, you promised us DFK Con, if during a stream, make it happen. And he he politely backtracked some of that for obvious reasons, right? You can't just be like, oh hey, we're gonna be there tomorrow. I'm sure it'll happen, but my take was we should do it right around PvP launch. How cool would that be? I think it's a lot of speculative coordinating.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing you want to do is sort of delays happen, right? Sort of announce here's a PvP launch and people make travel plans, you show up, and now you've
Oh
got a
God, that would
bunch
be
of
terrible.
yeah, you've got a bunch of DFK DGens, at the Mall of America with no PvP to play. So I get that, I respect it, but at one point in time, I know it'll happen, and I want it to happen there.
Yeah. No, it's there's so much potential for, for what can happen going forward with that, and with their connections to, to the esports scene and the production and all of that, and it's super super exciting. And I also really want to just go visit and knock on their doors and be like, hey, is Workhorse in?
So kidding aside, and Price Goose mentions this too. I was actually I forget whose stream it was. It may have been Crypto Grady's stream. Workhorse was on, and he mentioned something to I forgot how it came up, but it almost sounded like an open invitation to do a tour. And I messaged him in chat. I was like, "Are you saying content creators can go in and sort of take a tour of the facility?" And he's like, "Yeah, why not?" And I was like, "What? Why not? Oh my god!" So I reached out to Raph with ADFK, and I was like, "Dude, I know you're in the Midwest somewhere. I'm not sure how close you are, but you're our only hope. You need to go and take a tour of the facility and show us the space. It's
Yeah,
nice
man.
to be able to see the video, but to be able to sort of have an open invitation to check it out, that's pretty cool, pretty bullish.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm taking a trip in January because I think that's a San
that's
Diego
a
and I could
terrible idea.
possibly die. But at some point in time, I do want to go. I do want to visit.
Yeah, definitely. I have spent time in Minnesota every summer for the last number of years, and probably won't be back this summer or next summer, unfortunately. But if I am, I am definitely going there.
You know where you're going to. You know where you're heading. To maybe leave you with some final remarks here. I know there's so much to be bullish about. Maybe that being behind the scenes, you don't have to spill alpha, although I would encourage it. What's exciting you the most, sort of in the near future? Let's do this. What's exciting you about the near future and sort of down the road?
All right. I mean, I guess it depends on how near we're talking about, but I mean, all of us are so so looking forward to getting Sarandale relaunched and getting it behind us, because the past few months have been just such a slog with all of, I mean, with Harmony to begin with, and from having to migrate everything to Crystal Vale to get to parity, and then to be working on this relaunch. And I mean, it's great. We're so glad we're doing it. Clayton have been wonderful partners. Avalanche have been wonderful partners. Obviously, that's all great, but we really, really, really want to start making new stuff. And we are all so looking forward to, to being able to dig into these things that people have been complaining for months that we haven't gotten to, because they were things we said we were, wanted to start working on in May, which we did, or June or whatever. So yeah, short term, getting past that relaunch, it's going to be great. We're going to have new heroes, all of that. But then we're going to start seeing some of the, stuff that we've been waiting for a really long time. And that's super exciting. Medium term, I mean, let's get that combat going. It's going to be so, so much fun. And yeah, I mean, all of us are just thrilled about, I mean, we should temper our expectations slightly, because as Workhorse was explaining, it's going to be iterative. It's going to be baby steps, one piece at a time. But getting something out there that we can, so you can smash another hero with your hero, is going to be real great, and it's going to be so exciting.
Yeah, no, and sort of. I hope you can still hear me. My mic set died on me here, but
Oh, sorry.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I mean, it's sort of to Cujo's point. It feels like I think we're all excited to move forward. I myself am very excited to move forward. It feels like a really bad breakup, a
Yeah.
really bad divorce. this whole Harmony fiasco, and it would be nice to move beyond it and sort of thrive as a result of it. And I think big picture, it'll end up being that for sure. Um, I just wanna thank the team for your time, making you guys the availability of yourself. I know I sort of joked via Twitter that it took some coordinating. The coordination piece was on me.
Well,
Mr. Zipper for months had told me, yeah, let's do it, and I'm trying to find some time in my schedule to pull something like this off. But it was great. I'm glad we were able to pull it together, and
absolutely. Let's do it again sometime.
let's definitely do it again. I want to see and talk to more of you all. It's super bullish, and I hope we get to sort of meet in person at some sort of con here in the future, whether it be DFK Con or some other crypto conference.
Definitely.
But until then, you all, we will catch you all later. Thank you all for your time here in the
Thank
chat.
you.
And have a nice rest of your Friday.
Thanks, everybody.